Week and a half away from the NFL draft, but we're going to talk about some news from around the NFL. Take a little pause from our draft prep. Welcome to the show. It is Fantasy Football Today on Monday, April 14th. The gang is here. Adam, Dave, Heath, and Jamie. And we got Derek Carr, maybe going to miss the whole season. We got Joe Flacco going back to Cleveland, where he was absolutely ridiculous in a 5-game stretch to finish the year 2 seasons ago. We got Tyreek Hill being involved in some type of domestic disturbance, and now I see a lot of talk of, like, should they trade Tyreek Hill? Maybe that'll be a draft day stunner. Anyway, how about the Masters, guys? Did you guys watch the Masters finish?
Highlights.
What's the Masters?
Yeah, I didn't do it. Schaefer? Was it like a epic for the ages Masters?
Oh, I mean, it was really good. Rory McIlroy got his career Grand Slam. So, yeah, if you're a Rory McIlroy fan, you loved it. I was rooting for Bryson, but had some money on him. But it was good.
Okay.
Good for the company.
Yes, very good for CBS. Very good. All right, Joe Flacco, just to let you know, he scored 20.2 or more fantasy points in 5 of 6 starts for the Cleveland Browns, all 5 of his regular season starts. He averaged 41 pass attempts per game and was the number 2 quarterback per game in 6-point passing touchdown leagues a couple of years ago, number 5 per game and 4-point. But let's start with the Saints. Dave, what's your reaction to this news that Derek Carr has a shoulder injury that could put his 2025 season in jeopardy?
The reaction is that it sucks for the Saints. It sucks for Chris Olave. It sucks for everybody that's going to catch passes there. Huge question mark on what they'll do at quarterback. I did a little digging to see what quarterbacks are out there that Kellen Moore's worked with that could come in and just, in a pinch, if they don't draft a quarterback, they could use, because they know Kellen Moore and they know what he wants from the offense. The names aren't great. It's Kenny Pickett, it's Will Grier, it's Cooper Rush, it's Andy Dalton. All those guys are already on teams. Ben DiNucci is on the Saints roster. He worked with Kellen Moore once upon a time. That ain't the answer either. I think the door's wide open for them to take a quarterback at number 9 in this draft, and it's going to make me feel a lot worse about taking Chris Olave in fantasy drafts this summer.
All right, Heath, your reaction?
I don't know. I was just trying to go through this morning, and I haven't got it finished. I'm going to try maybe finish it here during the show, but does Derek Carr really been a huge boost to Chris Olave in his career?
Well, nobody can get worse.
That's the point. Well, I mean, his best yardage game last year was with Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, he did have, I was going to say, one game without Derek Carr last year. Chris Olave had, 107 yards, was it? He had 8 catches for 107 yards on 14 targets. No Rashid Shaheed in that game. Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener threw for 278 yards on 41 pass attempts. So it's hard to say. He played without Derek Carr a little bit in 2023, and he had a 37.8% target share, Chris Olave, with Jameis Winston. That was on only 51 snaps, 46 routes. That was with Jameis. So I don't know what to make of it. But do you feel, Heath, like over a full season of Spencer Rattler, or maybe it's Shedeur Sanders, they have the 9th pick. Like, do you think that their quarterback situation this year is going to be worse than Derek Carr?
I don't know that it will be noticeably worse for Chris Olave. I don't think it's going to be better, probably. I think it probably depends also, are you talking about the Chris Olave that for the last 3 seasons, we all believe the talent means that he should produce like? Or are you talking about the guy who generally has 1,000 to 1,100 yards and scores 4 or 5 touchdowns? I think he could definitely do that. I don't think he's necessarily going to be worse than what he's been. It's just maybe you don't project the big leap that we've kind of been projecting now for 3 years.
Well, as a rookie, he was wide receiver 27 per game. As a sophomore in 2023, he was wide receiver 21 per game. Jamie?
No, I think that's a fair assessment. If the quarterback play is not a dramatic fall off from Derek Carr, which is hard to expect these guys to be as good as Carr, but will they be, that far off from what his, sort of average play has been for a good portion of his time in New Orleans. So I think he's on something there. Chris Olave probably is just who he is, without better quarterback play. The hope was, and maybe still is, that Kellen Moore comes in and features him to a point where he could take that leap and could be that guy that we've been waiting for, and could be that must start fantasy receiver that we've been hyping up for basically his entire career. He also has to stay healthy. They added somebody in Brandon Cooks, who, for whatever it's worth, is going to steal some targets. I do think that the hope would be is that it's probably Sanders as opposed to Rattler, and you see some potential upside there. They've been speaking very highly of Spencer Rattler. I wonder if Taysom Hill gets healthy, what kind of role he'll play. But let's not go down that path. In any event, they'll probably sign somebody. One of our colleagues was on Good Morning Football this morning, in Logan Ryan, and he was suggesting Teddy Bridgewater. Just in terms of a veteran to come in and maybe give them some semblance of a player that could maybe still be somewhat of a playmaker. But my guess is they go the young route, whether it's drafting Sanders or somebody else and letting Rattler compete. And it's a total rebuild there. I mean, this team is awful.
Mm-hmm. And this might help push them towards that total rebuild too, because they've just been trying for the last 5 years to just keep it alive by pushing salary into the future and pushing salary into the future. Just for reference, kind of, Carr in New Orleans has played 27 games. He's averaged 223 passing yards per game and 25 pass touchdowns per 17 games.
Yeah, would it be crazy if a rookie quarterback hit that? No. Could Shedeur Sanders hit that? I think he could. Dark could hit that.
It's just a shame that this happens when they have the 9th pick in the draft. It's just such a bad quarterback draft. If they don't get Sanders in round 1, I don't know that this crop of quarterbacks is going to be better than what Derek Carr has been.
Well, you probably, if you don't think that Sanders is the answer, then you take best player available at 9 and you just push it back to 2026.
Yeah.
When you're probably going to be in the top 3, if this team goes the direction that's headed, and it's a much better quarterback class last year, and maybe you have a legacy play for Arch Manning.
So how about that? So what do you guys think about Alvin Kamara? I'll give you some quick numbers on Alvin Kamara. He played 4 games without Derek Carr and was, pretty good. He scored 17 to 18.2 PPR fantasy points in 3 of 4 games, but I think there's some troubling numbers there. He rushed for fewer than 40 yards, or 40 or fewer yards in 3 of the 4 games, and his 17-game pace, like he actually left one of the games early with an injury. That was he scored like 17 points in half the snaps against Washington, and that was a season-ending injury for Kamara. But just not a lot of yards. Basically, a ton of targets. Didn't really have Olave on the field a lot. Didn't have Shaheed on the field a lot, for what it's worth. But it was all catches. Really nothing special other than that. What do you guys think about Kamara? Would you still take him in the first 4 rounds if Derek Carr is out for the season?
Yes.
Yep.
Round 4, though.
I probably will not downgrade any Saints at this point. I generally, if there's not a quarterback, I project it pretty close to a league average quarterback, and Derek Carr's been pretty close to an average quarterback. Now, if we find out for sure that it's definitely going to be somebody we think is definitely below average, then maybe there's a small tick downward.
They'd have to go the entire draft without taking somebody.
I'd be pretty afraid of Alvin Kamara. I guess I'm in the minority here, but as I've said so many times, I love Kamara from a fantasy standpoint, but he's not a good running back anymore. He never makes a big play. And if he's on one of the worst teams in football, I guess that's good because they'll just keep throwing to him. But I don't know. Isn't
the discount already built in round 4, though? Like, you're talking about a guy that's a top 10 running back every single year. Yeah. And we're like, okay, I guess we'll draft him in round 4. Like, it feels like we've already discounted him.
He's also 30 with a new coach again. And I did speak to Kellen Moore at the league meetings about, are you going to manage his workload because of his age? And he basically gave the coach speak answer. But, the thing that he said, which sort of stood out to me a little bit, was, you just manage it as the year goes on. And so the receptions, I think, are safe. He just kind of has done this year over year throughout his entire career, so you're figuring 65 to 70 catches, I think, is probably easy, if not more. The bigger issue is, and I think this is where your concern probably comes in, Adam, is will he score touchdowns? And so on a team that's this bad, so half PPR, non-PPR, clearly he loses. But in full PPR, I mean, you're drafting a receiver who plays that position. And so hopefully he just continues to have that role. I mean, I'm going to be concerned. Obviously, you know how I feel about guys that are at this age. But I think he said it, the discount's already sort of built in. If we weren't concerned, he'd be a round 2 pick.
And they've been bottom half of the league in scoring 3 of the last 4 seasons, and they were 24th last year. So
And
like, he's been on bad offenses.
Yeah, and he was the only, like, of all the running backs who finished top 12, Kamara's offense was the lowest scoring. Here, I'm just going to read from my notes. In full PPR, the number of top 12 running backs who were on offenses ranked 20th or worse over the past 9 seasons is 1, 3, 3, 4, 3, 4, 1, 4, 3. So we almost always get 3 or 4 running backs who finish in the top 12 on an offense that's 20th or worse in scoring. I'm concerned about them being 30th or worse in scoring. That's my issue. It's like it's a big difference between being 24th and being one of the worst in football. But Kamara's a unique case, obviously, because he racks up all those catches.
It's also, again, a better offensive mind at the top of the head coach is going to be better, so you hope that sort of, carries some influence on the entire offense.
And so you're going to think about Kamara versus guys like Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery, James Conner. Kenneth Walker's going to be one where I think I might tilt toward Walker now, whereas before I was down with Alvin. But that's the range of running backs that I think he'll be in. And if you heard those names and you go, oh, yeah, I'll definitely take those guys ahead of Kamara, then you've made your decision. You're not going to take him. You're not going to get him. He won't be a top 50 pick for you. But I would imagine that in full PPR, he will end up being somebody's top 50 pick.
Okay. All right. And that will do it for the Saints. We're going to take a break. Come back and talk about the Cleveland Browns. We also have the Fantasy Cops. And we have your emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. We got a good Fantasy Cops, by the way, for you today. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. The Cleveland Browns are almost on the clock. They have the second pick in the draft after Tennessee, and they have signed a quarterback, Joe Flacco, 1 year, $4 million, could be worth up to $13 million. He is 40 years old, and in the last 2 seasons, he has been terrific for wide receivers. Like Josh Downs was on pace for, I think, 123 catches with Joe Flacco. Amari Cooper, David Njoku. Amari Cooper was on pace for 99 catches, 1,850 yards, and 10 touchdowns on 160 targets in 6 games with Joe Flacco. Well, actually 5 games, because he missed one of those games. David Njoku was on pace for 105 catches, 1,369 yards, 11 touchdowns on 159 targets in 6 games with Joe Flacco 2 years ago. Heath, what do you think about Flacco back to the Browns?
If they would announce Joe Flacco as their starter for the season, this would be great for Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku. I'm taking a little bit more cautious approach right now because they obviously have the draft capital to do something different, and they didn't give Joe Flacco like anything close to starting quarterback money. It's kind of low end backup money. So I'm not there yet, but this could be fantastic news for both Jeudy and Njoku.
Yes. They also have Kenny Pickett, who they acquired from the Eagles for a 5th-round pick, and they also traded Dorian Thompson-Robinson in that deal. All right, so, is this exciting? I also want to bring up the name Cedric Tillman because there's a pretty big difference in Jerry Jeudy's numbers with Tillman and without Tillman, and I think Njoku as well with Tillman and without Tillman. It's kind of a little bit of a crowded receiving core if Tillman is a factor. And
it's about to get a lot more crowded.
Exactly. They're about to get Travis Hunter at all likelihood. All right, so Jamie, break down the Browns for me and what you think of their passing game.
Well, I mean, clearly right now it's great for Njoku and Jeudy, but this almost signals and stuff that you heard coming out of the meetings is that they were not going to take a quarterback at 2, and that Travis Hunter is most likely the pick. I mean, Adam Schefter reported this as well, that this is the direction they're probably heading. So my guess is they're going to play him at receiver, and if that's the case, then you're looking at a pretty solid group. With Hunter, Jeudy, and Njoku and Tillman. It's pretty impressive if Hunter's as good as advertised. And so this is a great situation for Flacco. I think the bigger thing is, do they allow Kenny Pickett to compete for the job? Because, does his pedigree and maybe what he showed in the 2 basic starts that he had last year for the Eagles, give him a chance to, legitimately win the starting job. Clearly, Flacco was great for Stefanski leading in the playoffs, getting comeback player of the year, going 4-1 in those 5 starts. They got blasted by the Texans in 2023, but I don't know how much of that was specifically just Flacco's fault. He didn't have the greatest playoff game, but still he was, he threw for over 300 yards in 4 of those 5 starts. So the second part of this, though, is they have the 33rd pick, and they already brought in 3 guys for their top 30 visits in Dart, Milrow, and Shaw. How do you pronounce the name?
Chuck.
So they brought in those 3 guys, and do they go that route? You heard some things that they also kind of are interested in Kyle McCord as well. So, if there's some other rookie quarterback brought in at some point, then it makes it even tougher to say Flacco is going to be the guy. But I think week 1, he's probably going to be the starter if they don't take somebody at 2, or they don't trade back into the first round if they take Hunter or Abdul Carter at 2. I would guess that this is a good spot for Flacco. So, if he's out there in any sort of dynasty league where you can make ad drops, especially Superflex, you should make sure you go get him.
They could also trade up from 33. And they could, if they're willing to dangle their first rounder next year, they might be able to get in front of New Orleans if there's a team that's willing to fall that far back in this year's draft, which there might be in the top 10. And they could potentially get Hunter and Shador together. And that combo worked pretty well in Colorado. It would be fun if that's what they ended up doing there. But at 33, I would imagine Dart will go around that range. He might go a little bit before. Those other quarterbacks will definitely be there, right about there. Milrow especially. The other ones could fall a little bit further back. And if they do draft a quarterback, well, now their quarterback room is Pickett, Flacco, and this rookie. The more draft capital they put in the rookie, I don't know why they need both of those veterans. Maybe they end up trading one of them. I would keep Flacco around because he's got experience. He could help the rookie quarterback, and he could also start the season under center for Cleveland. But if it just turns out where Joe Flacco's the quarterback and their backup plan is Pickett or whatever, A, that's kind of an indictment on Pickett. But B, it would be bombs away for all the pass catchers that are there. Hunter would he be my favorite over Judy? Probably not, but it's really close between those two. I would take Travis Hunter over Olave as things stand right now.
As just a funny aside, Joe Flacco, the last 2 seasons, his 17-game pace over 13 games.
Oh, this is going to be nuts.
Is 4,400 yards and 33 touchdowns, which would be the best season of Derek Carr's career. And that includes a game where he did not throw a pass. So the averages are actually even better than that.
But he also, this is the same thing with Jameis. Like Flacco and Jameis, they take over for brief stretches. They throw 40 times a game. He threw 40.8 times per game with Cleveland in 2023. 37 pass attempts per game with the Colts last year, which is a lot. 4 starts with the Jets in 2022. He averaged 47 pass attempts per game. So I don't understand what that is all about. But if you go back to 2020,
I can tell you exactly what that's all about.
No, I mean 2020, he had made 4 starts with the Jets. He averaged 33 pass attempts per game, and he was on pace for 3,600 yards and 26 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. And also the thing with these guys, Jameis and Flacco in particular, it's wonderful. It's great for fantasy. They throw a lot of interceptions.
Yes.
And as soon as that happens, the coaches get tired of it and they'll bench them, So not necessarily, but they could bench them as coaches.
Well, I think that's why this move makes some sense a little bit differently than, if you want to say Jameis to the Giants, if that was going to be the starting option. Stefanski knows him. Like this is a reunion of a guy that had pretty significant success in a short period of time. I mean, their season was sunk in 2023. He comes off his couch, he goes 4-1, right, and they make the playoffs. So,
and I don't think it's fair to put his interceptions, like he's nowhere close to Jameis in that regard. He had one season, and it was 5 games basically with the Browns, where he had a 3.9% interception rate, which is way too high. But his career's 2.4, and he was 2.8 last year, and he doesn't have a year over 3 besides those 5 games with Cleveland since 2013. So Joe Flacco has not really been a high interception guy except for those 5 games with Cleveland.
Do you have an interception rate for Winston, Heath?
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's in the trust.
How much more is it than Flacco's? Is just what I'm curious.
So careers 3.5, so a full point higher. The last 3 seasons 4.3, 6.4, 4.1.
Let's do that. All right. I think this is going to be. We're going to talk about the Browns. I think on our next show because it's going to be NFL veterans who have a lot to lose or gain after the NFL draft. And if they draft Travis Hunter, what is that going to mean for Jerry Jeudy, for David Njoku, et cetera? And Dean in our chat is adamant. He is all caps saying the Browns are not taking Hunter. I guarantee the Browns take Abdul Carter. All right, Dean, I don't know what you know that nobody else knows, but the reporting is that they are zeroing in on Travis Hunter. Our next news item is about Tyreek Hill. So police were called to Tyreek Hill's house for a domestic disturbance. No charges were filed, which is good. But, there's you guys are in South Florida. I just was reading the Miami Herald. I saw a few things online. There's a little bit of a backlash here and wondering if now's the time to just cut bait and try to trade Tyreek Hill, who obviously has been unhappy, said he wanted out, then they made up or whatever. But Jamie, the Dolphins wide receivers right now, your thoughts?
I would imagine they're taking calls, but it's hard to say that someone is going to A, pay his contract, B, put up with the receiver that's 31 and now has some legal issues, which, for whatever it's worth, he hasn't been arrested, there's no charges been filed. Right. So, but is in the news for the wrong reasons, so I think what you're getting with him. You're still getting what I would hope is still a quality playmaker. His down season last year is still better than most in the league, but it's a lot to deal with, a lot of baggage. And so, especially for what the Dolphins are probably going to be asking for, they're not just going to give him away, but we've seen this before. You go back through Randy Moss all the way to today, star receivers don't always go for high price tags. Randy Moss traded for a 4th round pick. So it may not take much to get him, but, you're going to have to pay that salary. So I think if you're looking at the Dolphins perspective, clearly we addressed this when we had one of our mock drafts, the Jalen Waddle value, how much it would probably skyrocket. Jonnu Smith's value would skyrocket. And then just, at this point, you're looking at Nick Westbrook, Akine, and Malik Washington as the potential number 2 or number 3. Those guys would have some interest, assuming the Dolphins don't go in the draft and replace him with someone. So there's a lot of moving parts at this point. I think just from Tyreek's perspective on its own, you have to treat him as a number 2 receiver at this point. I don't think you should be drafting him as a low end number 1, high end number 2. So he goes from arguably the number 1 receiver a year ago, going into the season, to someone who's really fallen off. And I'm sure Heath can address this. Like he said at several points throughout the end of last year in this offseason, when a receiver starts to show you that he's starting to slip, you might want to just buy into who he is at this point. And so for his age and what he showed, you could say the wrist injury, you could say obviously Tua missing 6 games. All those things have to factor in. But Tyreek's best days are probably behind him.
Well, if we don't just want to compare some 17-game paces here, played 11 games with Tua last year. He played 17 games with Tua the year before. And let's look at the difference. Just the Tua games. 2023, 171 targets. Actually, I'm sorry. This was 16 games. So I'm comparing 17-game pace in 2024 with 16 games in 2023. 171 targets to 134 targets. 119 catches down to 87. 1,800 yards down to 1,073 yards, 13 touchdowns down to 9 touchdowns. Just so much different. And really what really stands out is the target share. Because Jonnu became a big factor. They threw to Achane so much. 23.1% target per route run rate. 21.6% target share with Tua last year. The year before that, he missed a game, and he had a 31% target share. So they just didn't throw to him as much.
They reconfigured their whole offense.
Yeah. But did they do that because they wanted to, or did they do that because Tyreek Hill was hurt in training camp?
I think they did that to protect Tua. They knew they had a weak offensive line and a quarterback that they wanted to keep on the field. So getting the ball out of his hand as fast as possible was really a goal of theirs.
They did that 2 years ago also, though. That's the thing. I think it said 3 years in a row, if not 2 or 3 years in a row, they've led the league in the fastest release time for their quarterback. He gets rid of the ball quicker than any other quarterback.
That's since Mike McDaniel came on board.
Right. Yeah. And 2 of those years, you had a 1,700-yard receiver in Tyreek Hill. So I know that they can produce this elite receiver while getting the ball out quickly. But the ADOT was much lower for Tua in 2024. Like and he was throwing to Achane and he was throwing to Jonnu Smith. It
Right.
wasn't just
What was Tyreek's ADOT?
11.4, which was higher than the year before.
Right. It was really the target share.
That's a
target
bad
per route.
combination.
Yeah, target per route run rate was.
I mean, look, in Tyreek's defense, you mentioned Adam. He was hurt in training camp. He had some sort of wrist procedure after the season, or at least differing reports. He's been seen with a some sort of cast or something on his wrist in some of the photos. I'm sure the arrest when he was put in handcuffs that's been documented as well. That probably didn't help the situation also. And then you have the Tua out the 4 games, comes back, misses the final 2 with the hip injury. It's also, the 2 seasons prior, Achane wasn't who he became, especially as a pass catcher. They didn't throw the running backs as much. They did not have the same type of production from their tight ends, and still Waddle was up and down, but obviously Waddle was a better player. So now they have different options to use. And I think that's kind of where Mike McDaniel wanted to eventually get to, which is why he sort of, retooled some of the things that they were doing. It's a matter of, can he ever get back to being this superstar fantasy wise, and I just don't know at his age if that's realistic. Now, you've talked about this a lot. He still gets open. He still shows the ability to make people miss and find ways to, clearly when the ball's in his hands, he's going to be dangerous. But if that speed slips to any degree, he's not going to dominate you with his size. We know that. And so if there's not going to be a lot of off script plays, because that's not what the Dolphins do. They certainly don't want to put Tua in those situations. Mike McDaniel's talked about that, in terms of how Tua got hurt last year, running into DeMar Hamlin and trying to make a play. He's got to be smarter. So we know this is going to be a very unscheduled rhythm offense that if Tyreek's targets are disappearing to some extent, it's terrifying. So you'll still probably get a very good fantasy receiver if you draft him at the right price. It's a matter of, to me, the 2 most difficult people I think to draft and to rank, at least right now, are Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill. Because you know what they are when they're great, but can they get great? Can they be great again? I feel more comfortable with McCaffrey at this point. Tyreek is starting to scare me more and more every time we talk about him.
And I think especially with we got 5 months until real football, and I talk about this with veterans a lot. There's a chance that they lose value before they play another game again. So if you're going to buy in Dynasty this time of year, you want to buy at a discount. But Tyreek, while Jamie's right, he's not, as far as I know, facing any charges or anything from this most recent incident. It's just a reminder that this has been a theme that's run throughout, even before he was in the NFL, interactions with law enforcement and poor decisions. And there's a higher risk for Tyreek Hill. I don't think it's stretching to say this, that something else happens to crush his value in the next 5 months.
Yeah.
Contingency
on the Dolphins. Well, I'm sorry. If he stays on the Dolphins, you just have to wonder. That is such a volatile situation. When does he say, "Forget it"? I'm sitting. Holding out, or whatever it may be. I hope he finds a new place, because it's a toxic situation.
It would not be shocking if we get one of these draft day trades of Tyreek Hill for something that I can't believe they gave him up for that.
Yeah, and I just, for the record, I do think he still gets open. I mean, I watched a lot of the tape. I showed it on Beyond the Box Score with some screenshots and stuff, but also ESPN Analytics, they have the open score for every receiver that's relevant, basically. And he was 8th. He had the same number, 82 out of 100. The same number, I think it was 83 in 2023. It was 82. He's been the top 8 in that metric 2 straight years. So
The one place he did kind of fall off last year that I wouldn't think would be related to the wrist, unless he was just trying to avoid contact, it was his lowest yak per reception season of his career. And 3.6 yards after catch per reception is not fantastic, especially if a team's trying to throw more short targets and have more yak in their offense.
And Chicago and Seattle have 2 second-round picks. You think one of them gives up one of their picks for Tyreek? I can't see Chicago doing it at all.
Depends what their cap situation is. I mean, it's a big number you have to carry.
It's a huge number for the next 2 years, and then he's free.
I don't think the Dolphins get a second if they don't eat some of that contract.
Oh, they'd have to.
Ooh, Johnny says.
Hold on, Buffalo has 2 2s as well.
Tyreek for a 3rd and a ham sandwich. And I just want to say, I had a ham and cheese omelet yesterday. It was one of the best omelets I've ever had. oh man, it was just hit the spot. I was really hungry. Had some home fries with it. But this was just a legendary omelet. I'm going to keep eating these omelets. I'm going to have a couple more this week.
Yeah.
All right. Some more news items for you here, just real quick. All signs pointing to Tennessee drafting Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders not being a top 3 pick right now. Things we always get surprises in the draft, but doesn't
top 4. You could extend that to top 4.
Yeah, the Patriots aren't going to take him at 4, but maybe a team will trade up. Sean McVay said Tutu Atwell will be on the field a lot more in 2025. Is this fantasy relevant, guys, either for Atwell or for Nacua or Devontae Adams?
So I was there when he was asked about this, and it was a very honest answer from McVay, and he's usually, pretty honest with this. The question was, basically, why did you sign this guy to a $10 million deal? And it seems like, you haven't really justified using it. And he's like, fans are right. I haven't done a good job of getting him the ball enough. He brought up like his 17-game pace of what he was when Cooper Kupp was out and Puka was out at the start of the season. I don't think it's going to matter yet, but I would not be surprised if they force the ball to him a few more times. And you are talking about Devontae Adams at 32 and Puka Nacua, who's proven to be a little bit injury prone going back to college and what we saw last year. So if one of those two guys, certainly as we saw last year, 2 guys went down for them, then there's an opportunity for maybe him to get a little bit of a bigger role. Remember, Demarcus Robinson's now gone. So there's an opportunity for him to make some plays. I think if you're in a very deep league, super flex, Scott Fishbowl type of situation, where you're looking for a home run type of play, certainly best ball, he could have some big plays and make some have some opportunities. But I don't think it's going to necessarily deviate from what the Rams have been. They focus on 1-2 guys. I don't think it's going to be all of a sudden, Tutu Atwell and maybe a little bit more from whatever else. Yeah. So it was just a very interesting. I get you the whole answer if you want. It was kind of interesting.
Kyler Murray, what did he rush for about 580 yards last year or something? I don't know if somebody has that. He says he wants to run more. He said he felt something in his surgically repaired knee early last season, and he wants to run more in 2025. We just talked about this. I think he had a high yards per carry, but didn't run that much. He wants to run more in 2025. Kyler Murray.
It was we talked about this last week because it was the comment from Brian Schottenheimer, who the Cowboys signed Clayton Adams, and he was talking about Dak. The question was, I went back and listened to the whole thing for Schottenheimer, that he was asked the question about Dak running more. Can he still be a playmaker with his legs coming off the hamstring injury? And he said, you don't necessarily have to run more. Clayton Adams said that Kyler would come to games and say he doesn't want to run more. And just the clip that he said kind of made some headlines. So I'm glad that Kyler says that. That certainly helps his fantasy value immensely if he's going to be more of a runner.
He had a career low in rush attempts per game, 4.6, career high in rushing average at 7.3. Right. If he keeps that average up and he runs more, you know what that means. That's a good thing. He talked about Marvin Harrison, too. He did an interview with one of the reporters out in Arizona and talked about how it took Marvin a very long time to really get acclimated. And, he's a good teammate, and he thinks that Marvin's going to be, much more acclimated and much more explosive in his second season. So it's an interesting interview to go back and listen to if you've got the time.
Dak Prescott said he's doing well. He could play today if he had to. He's recovering from a hamstring surgery. Texas wide receiver Isaiah Bond, who's a guy we basically skipped over, which is my fault, on last week's wide receiver preview. He was arrested on sexual assault charges. So that's not news we want to see. Obviously, a bad situation there, Isaiah Bond. Drew Lock, quarterback, signing with Seattle, 2-year, $5 million deal. He'll be a backup to Sam Darnold. Chicago signed slot cornerback Kyler Gordon to a 3-year, $40 million extension with $31.25 million guaranteed, and cornerback Patrick Peterson, an absolute legend, great player. He is retiring. If you want more draft coverage, we'll have some for you later this week, and then next week, obviously, leading into the draft, but also check out the With the First Pick podcast. They do a phenomenal job breaking everything down. And check out FFT Dynasty. You're going to hear fantasy experts from around the industry talking about their favorite prospects and their least favorite prospects. We'll be right back with the Fantasy Cops, and I'm learning about what a Denver omelet is after this. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so following up on the omelet, Johnny says Denver omelets for the win. This is the guy who brought up the ham sandwich. I've never heard of a Denver omelet. Have you guys?
Have you been to a diner in your life?
I've seen a Western omelet. I don't think I've ever seen a Denver omelet.
Yeah.
It looks like the same thing as a Western omelet. Eggs, bell peppers, onions, ham, and often cheese.
Yes.
All right, Denver omelet. Let's see. Denver omelet
Get
versus
on.
Western omelet. The Denver. Oh, okay. They're the same. Yeah, I don't need the peppers. I hate bell peppers. Bell peppers are crap.
I love bell peppers.
You would.
Yeah, they're really good for you too. Like you're always complaining about me eating too much meat and how it's bad for my health, and you want to eat some bell peppers, which are fantastic for you.
Well, I had ham yesterday. That's really bad for you. Okay, let's get to the fantasy cops. Here we go. This is the fantasy cops news again. Oh yeah, fantasy cops time. This one is from no name. Okay. We have a 10-team dynasty league. League is going on 5 years now. It's made up of 2 of my brothers, 3 brothers-in-law, and the rest are friends. We recently had an egregious trade dispute that has caused havoc in the league. My brother, who is a casual fantasy player, has to be reminded to check his messages constantly. He doesn't respond to trades and has to be called out on the public message board in order to get him to respond. I had 2 other members of the league message me privately to kindly remind my brother to check his pending trade transactions. For whatever reason, he simply went in and accepted all the pending trades. 2 of them. Here were the 2 transactions. Number 1 is between my brother and Guy A. My brother gives up these picks in 2025. 1.5, 1.9, 2.6, 3.2, and 3.5. So 5 overall picks, including 2 first-rounders. He gets Pitts, Bateman, Olave, Brian Robinson, and Zay Flowers. To be honest, this wasn't a bad trade and isn't the primary one that's in dispute. Transaction 2 is between my brother and Guy B. My brother sends Marvin Harrison Jr. Guy B sends Tyreek Hill. Transaction 2 sent the league into an uproar. Harrison for Tyreek? Are you kidding me? Also, Guy B sends atrocious trades like this all the time, and I frequently get complaints from other members at how lopsided his offers are. Additionally, Guy B had completely forgotten that he even sent the trade a month ago. He couldn't believe that my brother accepted it and was all giddy and happy because he had just gotten away with giving up Tyreek Hill to get Marvin Harrison Jr. in a dynasty league. All right, here we go. I immediately sent my brother a text to ask what he was thinking. He responded by saying that he had transaction 1 all mixed up and he thought he was the one getting the picks. And then I asked about transaction 2, and he responded by saying that he's been working 13-hour days and just wasn't thinking straight. So, with everyone in the league upset, specifically about the Tyreek for Harrison trade, and the fact that my brother was not thinking straight and was showing remorse, I made the commissioner's decision to reverse both of the trades until it could be reassessed by all 3 parties. I made my brother post a public message explaining why he accepted those trades and that he did want them reversed until he could think about it more. Well, what do you guys think happened? As a result, Guy B lost it. He doesn't want the trade reviewed, reversed, or reassessed. Right. I explained that the trade can still stand if both parties are willing. It's just that I wanted a more thorough and fair explanation from both sides. I also put up an anonymous poll asking the league if the trade should stand, and the majority voted that they should not. So in the end, I let democracy rule by letting the league vote on it. Guy B has now left the league and says he wants no part in leagues that review trades. He's in one other redraft league of mine, which I think he's going to leave also. All right, I'll leave it there. Heath is going to say I'm the worst commissioner in the world and is going to side with Guy B. I will take it. What do you all think of this?
He's not the worst commissioner in the world, but
He's not.
I don't know what the reasoning for like on this first one. If your brother-in-law or brother says, "I thought I was getting the other side of the trade, I didn't want to do that." Generally, I think we all agree. If somebody says after they make a trade, "Oops, I didn't mean to do that," we reverse it.
I would amend that though to immediately you have to be like, "Oops, I made a mistake." He didn't bring that up until he was asked about it.
Fair.
You know? By the way, is Tyreek Hill for Marvin Harrison Jr. that bad of a trade?
I was gonna ask, like, is
Dynasty League.
is the brothers team have a chance to win?
Not anymore.
I don't
So yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
Marvin
he just
Harrison,
got a pretty significant influx of talent, whether you like those players or not,
Yeah.
comparatively to rookies. So
well, but that's the thing. They reversed the pick. If they reverse the picks trade and he gets Tyreek Hill, then it makes no sense at all.
right.
I've got Marvin Harrison like 20 spots higher than Tyreek Hill in my dynasty wide receiver rankings. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a big gap, but I would not even begin to consider reversing that if it went through in one of my leagues.
Yeah. It is a big gap, but it's also one that's based on projections, and you could totally see a scenario where Tyreek Hill has a much better year than Marvin Harrison this year.
Yep.
And then maybe Marvin's a bust. What do we get? Just because he was the fourth pick in the draft? You know what I mean? It's not.
I mean, look,
that
if,
egregious.
if you were anticipating being a contender, you'd rather have Tyreek Hill than Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
We just got done explaining why Tyreek Hill might not be so good for fantasy. I'm not sure if I agree with that.
But his down season may be the best season of Marvin Harrison's young career.
But
Well,
I
Dan,
might take the chance. I might take the chance on Marvin
Obviously,
Harrison
long-term in
putting it
Dynasty, you'd rather
together
have
at
Marvin
some
Harrison.
point versus
but
Tyreek Hill potentially being on the downswing.
Yeah.
Agreed. But it's justifiable if you're competing now.
Okay, so what do we do about this league where Guy B has left the
Well,
league? It's too
Guy
late
B
now?
needs to be replaced, but I think you got to ask the brother: does he even really want to play in this league?
Right. That's the thing. If he's not paying attention and he's just hitting yes, 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 like this isn't Jim Carrey in what was it where he was playing God and he just said yes on all the prayers.
Oh, what was the name of that movie?
Ace Ventura: Pet Detective.
No, it was why can't I think of it? Anyway, he
Bruce Almighty.
Bruce
Yes.
Almighty. Yeah.
he's got to pay attention. I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah, you can't have somebody
So
holding.
this brings up a question that you guys can help me with, because I've been putting this conversation off for over a year in one of my leagues. Don't say anybody's name, guys. Like that question of, do you want to still be in the league? What's the way to ask that as a commissioner without sounding like the biggest jerk in the history of fantasy football?
Oh, you just say,
You do.
hey, you haven't been active in anything but the draft and paying, which we appreciate.
Yep.
But is this something that you're doing because you want to participate, or just because you've been doing it year over year? Like, I don't want to force you to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah, you just ask them. You in for this year? You sure? Okay.
But they always
They
say
say
yes.
yes and they pay. There's nothing you can do, man.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do.
Well, I mean, you can't kick people out of a league. One of the things that he said in there, like, I'm
course.
running this league like a democracy. And that's not the way that I think fantasy football really works.
No, because that's the thing.
There is a commissioner that's in charge.
You're right, Heath. Everyone was pissed about the trade, so of course they voted to overturn the trade. That's not the reason. That's one of the worst things you did.
You gotta laugh at the I posted the poll anonymously. Well, I mean,
Oh, did he? Yeah, no, that's the
Could have been
thing.
anybody.
If everyone's all upset about the trade, of course they're going to vote that way. But you've got to be the commissioner and establish rules here. I don't think you should have. I don't think you should have overturned the Tyreek for Harrison one. Maybe the other. No, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't have overturned either of them.
and I wonder if it wasn't his brother, would he have the same conversations with
Right.
the manager? Because he could be like, what are you doing to your brother, your best friend? If it's just like some random person that's in the league with you that like, I don't think Adam's reaching out to our British contingent and saying, dude, what'd you do? Like,
I haven't had to do any. We haven't had any trades like that.
no, you just sent a bad one today, though.
Someone asked me when I was going to add the 2027 draft picks to our dynasty league so they could be traded. I didn't realize I had to do that. There's a very easy setting in the commissioner tools. So I did it this morning. And just to make sure it was working properly, I offered Jamie my 4th round pick in 2027 for Anthony Richardson, and he declined. And what did you send back?
I didn't decline. I just sent you a counter offer of my 4th round pick this year from Malik Neighbors.
Okay. Well, we're starting the dialogue. We'll get closer. All right. Thanks very much for the Fantasy Cops. Commissioner, you really screwed the pooch on that one. You got some work to do. Let's read some emails now. fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. This one comes from Conrad. He says, oh, wait, hold on one second. Let's see if I have the soundbite for this one. Talk amongst yourself. What did you think of Bruce Almighty, Jamie?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. The dog peeing in the toilet. I mean, it was awesome.
Nah, I can't find it. Hey, Adam, Dave, Jamie, Heath, and Dan. Here's my Dan soundbite. I feel I made a mistake the last couple years on older players. Basically, just to sum up this email from Conrad, he wants to know what age we think is the age of decline for running backs and wide receivers.
32 for receiver.
He also cited articles that Mike Tagliere wrote in 2021 with this data. So anyway, go ahead, Jamie. Sorry.
I think for receivers, it's 32. You know, there's a clear history of when they start to decline. They don't all fall off. You know, there's clearly some outliers to this. For running backs, it's typically around age 28, but 30 is when you start to see really the decline of just great player becoming irrelevant in some cases. And again, you can't say it's, 100% success of, predicting when this happens, but that's typically the years when they start to really fall off. Now, again, technology has changed. Medicine has changed. These guys are able to play a little bit longer. They're taking care of their bodies differently. Hopefully they can play into their early 30s at those positions, mid 30s for receivers. But we just got finished talking about Tyreek Hill. He turned 31 and started to, show some decline last year. For whatever reasons, it happened. Devontae Adams was looking like that at the beginning of the season, then got rejuvenated by going to play with his seemingly best friend and looked awesome. Mike Evans got off to a slow start, missed a couple of games, came back and looked like the Mike Evans of old. So Derrick Henry's coming off another amazing season at 30. He turned 31 now. So we'll see. Hopefully it continues to allow these guys to play longer into their careers and have success, at this age.
And I just want to say, I've talked a lot also about the 32, right? There's just so few receivers that are good at 32, and a lot of them just hit the cliff. Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins last year, and there have been other examples, Julio Jones.
Cooper Kupp.
But also, but also it could be 31. Some guys are really bad at 31. Some guys get bad at 30. Just anytime you get up to that age, I never consider 29 old. And if a guy is good at 29, I'm not even concerned about 30. I think you got to be a little concerned about 31. It's not just 32. And for running
specifically receivers.
Yeah, all receivers. At running back, like I can give you some examples of guys who were really bad at 29. DeMarco Murray was very good at 28. He had a 1,300-yard season at 28. He had a bad 29-year-old season, and that was his last in the NFL. LaShawn McCoy bounced around from having some good seasons. Like I think he was good at 28. He was not. I mean, he had an okay season, but inefficient at 29. Terrible at age 30, LaShawn McCoy. Bounced back at age 31 and then had 10 carries at age 32. Mark Ingram was pretty good at age 29 and 30. David Johnson was bad at 28, bounced back at 29, and then in his last two seasons, David Johnson was terrible. Melvin Gordon, though, terrible at 29. So I would just say once you get to 29, it's not like it's a guarantee they're going to be bad, these running backs. 29 is fine for a wide receiver. 29 for a running back, you just have to understand. You look at DeMarco Murray, you look at Melvin Gordon, you look at LaShawn McCoy. There's a big possibility that they could have a really bad season. So that is out there. It's not a science, though. All right. What do we got? We got, Eric. Man, so off on the sound bites. I'm just going to play this one.
Carl.
But Eric says, morning from where Nowhere Land meets the boonies. Dave, you know where Nowhere Land meets the boonies?
No, I have no idea what that means.
In a Superflex league, how many quarterbacks do you carry on your team? Standard bench.
Redraft?
Yes.
At least one on your bench, if not two.
3 to 4 is the right answer, yeah.
Okay.
AI says the concept of where Nowhere Land meets the boonies is a metaphorical expression, not a specific geographical location.
Gotcha.
Eric.
First of all, bad guy, I do have my sounds labeled. Let me explain. I have 8 sounds per page. and I've got like 10 pages of sounds. So I have to scroll through it. So that's why sometimes I don't have them queued up because they're 5 pages away on my board here.
I think we all think it's like a board, like you just push, like, DJ, like, you just.
There is a board, and I do press a button, but I have to change the page. There's like a digital page that lists 8 sounds.
You should send out a picture of what it looks like.
I'll show you right now.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Why don't you put the sound, like you don't use 80 sounds over the course of months. So why don't you just put the sounds that you use most often on the first page so that you have them ready? And then maybe the sounds you use second most often on the second page. And then you won't ever have to scroll down to the bottom page because you don't actually use those sounds.
I can't though, because I'd have to have the actual sounds in an MP3 file. And I don't. I have them loaded up on this mixer, but they're gone. The hard copies are gone. So every time I get a new file, I have to, either put it at the end or replace one earlier. And it's great because I have this archive of this. Hold on. Right, I have like this random Dave laugh from 6 years ago, whatever, on page 4. But yeah, I only have 8 buttons. So it's not like a soundboard with 40 buttons. I just have to go to the next page.
Show us what it looks like.
All right, I will. You answer this question, I'll show you what it looks like. Ed from Pittsburgh has a keeper question. And okay, so this year is the reset year. Whatever, I'll just read the whole thing. We operate in 3-year chunks where we scrap all rosters and redraft. We have to keep one player and can keep a second if we wish, but players are kept with first and second round value. This year is the reset year, and I'm trying my hand at ranking my top 30 players for this year's draft. So it's a little dynasty-like. You can keep a guy for up to 3 years, then you reset. Currently, I have Rashee Rice around 17th overall, since I'm looking at a possible 3 years of rostering him, and the looming suspension and injury weighs a lot less on my decision. Do I have Rashee Rice too high, or am I in the ballpark with my ranking? 17th overall, looking at players for the next 3 years.
So I guess this is a good time to mention that Drew Davenport, who we talk about sometimes, does a lot of legal work, works for Football Guys, is a lawyer, just did a recent fantasy football legal update on Rice's situation, was basically saying that the case does not really appear anywhere in the public record in Dallas. There's a civil trial coming up in June, but there's nothing on the docket for the criminal charges. And so he was actually saying he wasn't certain, in fact, didn't see it as super likely that Rice was going to be suspended this year. So maybe he's a little higher in redraft than he is in a 3-year window. I don't know, but 17 overall, especially if you're including the rookies, feels a little bit high to me.
I think if you're evaluating Rice, we're going to have a lot of discussions about this. Like, you have to, A, feel like he's the best receiver for the Chiefs. And I think there's a lot of questions about that because it could be worthy. B, how healthy is he coming off the knee? Will he still be the same player? Hopefully that's the case. And then I think it's becoming a little bit less and less of how long a suspension will be, because he still may get suspended code of conduct from the league. I don't know if Drew addresses that at all. I'll go take a look, Keith. But if you've read it, that the commissioner still may step in at some point and say you're getting 2 games, and we'll move on from this if there's a civil trial, especially. So that to me feels like almost the lesser part of what you're looking at with Rice. If he's still going to be good, if Worthy's better than him, for example, but will he be as elite, like 17th overall elite? Like that's a pretty prominent player if you're factoring in him being that special. And I started out that way, with when we started looking at our early rankings, that I thought he has a chance to be like that. But as Worthy finished the year, went into the playoffs, like I have my doubts. I think Worthy might be better than him.
Here's my mixer. So you see I got these 8 buttons here, and then there's that screen where there's a time there. I don't know. And there's arrows on the screen. So I have to scroll to the right, and I get 8 sound options, and then scroll to the right again. I get 8 more. And then, so that's how it, and then they're color coded, whatever. So you can see blah, blah, blah. But that's
Thomas, could you mark this moment so that when we submit for awards next year, we could use this particular segment?
Okay. Anyway, let's go to our next question here. It's from Brock. I have 107 and 110 in my 1 QB 10-team league. I think I'm going to take Quinshon Judkins if I can get him at 107. My question is, who has the better chance of being successful in the NFL for my 10th pick, Caleb Johnson or Matthew Golden? Caleb Johnson, running back out of Iowa State. Matthew Golden, Or Iowa. Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas.
Man,
Is he
it's so
making these
contingent on where they go.
Right. Is he making these picks before the NFL draft?
That's
Uh,
interesting.
I hope not, but
Yeah, I'm releasing my pre-draft rookie top 40 this week, hopefully tonight, maybe tomorrow. And I will probably have Golden a couple spots ahead of Johnson.
I think I would too.
okay, let's go to our next question. It is John from a cool city in Cali.
La Jolla.
Dear Miguel, Robbie, and Johnny. Googling. Oh, is this Cobra Kai? Ugh,
Oh, yes.
garbage. 12-team half PPR, super flex, keep 4.
What'd you watch this weekend?
I've been catching up on the Righteous Gemstones. That's my new show. Everybody loves it, so I just started season 2. Very funny show.
I tried the bear.
Oh, what'd you think?
I want to play ball breaker.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
How do you play it? They just hit each other in the.
No, it's the video game inside
Oh.
the sandwich shop.
Okay, my bad guess. Anyway, keep 4 of these guys in Superflex. It's half
What were
PPR.
you about to say?
Well, ball breaker. What do you think I was about to say? Najee
Yeah.
Harris in the 6th. Chris Olave in the 7th. Tua in the 8th. Superflex. Debo in the 9th. Kelsey in the 10th. Darnold in the 12th. Juwan Jennings in the 17th. Calvin Ridley in the 18th.
Keep how many?
Keep 2. Oh, keep 4. Keep 4. I'm sorry.
And who was the first name you said in the 6th round?
Najee.
Najee.
You keep
Shit.
4?
Jennings and Ridley in the 17th and 18th are the 2 easy ones, right?
I
I would probably go both quarterbacks too.
Yeah, I think the quarterbacks in those 2. 2 in the 8th, Darnold in the 12th, and then the 17th and 18th round. Jennings.
If we like what happens in New Orleans at quarterback, then Olave's got to get in there.
Not over the other 2 receivers for me. Value's too good.
You could keep Tua and 3 receivers.
Yeah,
And find
super
another
flex. If I keep those 2 quarterbacks at that value and then take somebody early, I'm going to do that.
Okay, I
Yeah,
just want to show
if you're
you.
taking a quarterback early either way, I'd rather have Olave than Darnold.
Not me.
Okay, so I just want to show you one last thing here. This is a Word document about my mixer. So I just so we could send something else for the award show.
You don't even have it saved.
No, I haven't saved it. I just came up with this. So yeah.
Wow.
Anyway. Okay. The last question. We can stop sharing that now. This is from Turner.
Michael?
10-team PP. No, and Hooch. 10-team PPR
Great
keeper
movie.
league.
Wow.
Never seen it. We're
Oh,
allowed
God.
three. It's a little before my time. We're allowed 3 keepers per season with a 1-round tax per year. I have the 7th pick. The draft is snake. My best keeper options are Olave in the 8th, Caleb Williams in the 10th, and Mike Evans in the 6th.
Is this the Olave show? Like, what did I miss?
I know, right? So 10-team PPR, he can keep Olave in the 8th, Caleb in the 10th, or Evans in the 6th. He's currently being offered Achane for pick 2.4. And Achane can be kept for a 9th round pick.
Done.
Grade this trade for me.
So you technically have to give up your 2nd and your 9th for HN.
I guess so.
Done.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'd do it because especially if there's going to be 3 keepers out of the mix already. So it's really, yeah, do it.
And it means that he has to spend a first to keep Achane next year. And if he has a monster year, guess what? You're keeping
No.
Achane.
No, it'd be an 8th for HN next year.
But also he
He's
has
just-
to,
Oh, that makes it even better.
but he also has to throw back one of the keepers. Olave in the 8th, Caleb in the 10th, Evans in the 6th.
Is Superflex?
No.
No.
Caleb.
Okay.
Unless the Saints do nothing.
Even so, you're not keeping in a 10-team league 1 quarterback, Caleb Williams in the 8th round.
But if he hits, you're going to be glad to have him for a long time.
Ooh,
You can say the
I
same
would
thing about Olave, but Heath's argument that we haven't seen it from Olave yet makes me think that there's a better chance of us getting a great fantasy asset out of Caleb than out of Olave.
Olave also may be on a different team next year.
Let's do true or false from Johnny, following up on all the omelet talk. Adam doesn't even know what a club sandwich is. True or
I'd say
false?
false. You're a sandwich guy.
False.
But does he have everything in the club sandwich?
From what I understand, and I could be wrong about this, the thing that makes a club sandwich is the bacon. If it doesn't have bacon, it's not the club. It's not necessarily turkey, lettuce, tomato, bacon. It's the bacon makes it a club, Johnny.
Isn't it
So
that it's a triple decker that makes it a club?
A BLT is a club sandwich.
I think I might be wrong about this. I think it was false.
Yeah.
I know if I go to a restaurant and order a club sandwich, I know what I'm getting. But I did read one time that it's the bacon that specifically makes it a club. But looks like it's a 3-layer sandwich featuring typically toasted bread, turkey or chicken, bacon, lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise.
I think it's 3 layers that make it a club.
3 layers? Okay.
So it's a BLT with turkey or chicken.
But it's got the 3
And you
layers.
throw an extra piece of bread in there.
Okay.
Johnny, you were right. I don't know what it is. Guys, you had too much faith in me. Thank you all for watching and
I
listening.
didn't have any faith in you.
We will talk to you on Wednesday with veterans who could be hurt the most from the NFL draft. For Dave, Jamie, Heath, and Thomas, I'm Adam. See you next time.